morning or good evening to you all, depending on your time zone. Good afternoon from here in Dubai, where I'm situated, and welcome to this, the latest in the CIPS MENA series of webinars. My name's Sam Champong. I'm the head of CIPS Middle East and North Africa, and I'm pleased to welcome you all once again. We have a varied audience from across the globe with a mix of backgrounds from different industries and varied professions. So we do look forward to interacting with you all. So if you work in the profession of procurement, you are undoubtedly expected to have an ability to negotiate. Rightly or wrongly, the art of negotiation has been the one practice within procurement and supply that is almost universally attributed to the profession as an essential tool. So today we're going to focus on exactly that, the art of negotiation. But in this case, we're going to focus not on standard negotiation techniques, not even on advanced negotiation, but on how to negotiate under pressure in a complex business situation where the stakes are high and the success of the negotiation is critical to your organization. To understand how to do this, we're going to explore the FBI negotiation model, which is used in situations such as hostage scenarios and undercover police operations. You will all have an opportunity to hear from our guest today, and we'll also have time for you to pose your own questions. Now, to do that, simply type your question in the Q&A button below, or if you want to ask a question directly, simply use the raise hand button and I will unmute your microphone so you can ask the question live. Today, we have a great guest with a varied and illustrious career. We truly are very fortunate to have him with us here today. Matthias Schranner is a former hostage negotiator and undercover police officer. Trained by the FBI, he certainly has had his fair share of critical negotiation scenarios. Following his career in law enforcement, he's now the founder of the Schranner Negotiation Institute, which has operations around the world. So, Matthias, thank you very much for coming to join us here today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to discuss these not standard negotiation. As you mentioned, we will focus on really tough negotiations, on really difficult negotiations within this webinar.
Fantastic. So, Matthias, over to you.
Over to me, which is great. Thank you so much for handing over. What I would like to start with, with a hostage taking, because I think most of you, you're not experienced in how to negotiate with a hostage taker. So I would like to use one of my examples to involve you into my world. And thank you again, Sam, for inviting me. As you mentioned, I'm a former hostage negotiator. And well, how to negotiate with a hostage taker, it's from my perspective similar to like how to negotiate with a single source negotiation partner, because sometimes we believe the power is on the other side, sometimes we believe there is no way for cooperation, and sometimes we believe we have to give in or we have to offer a compromise. And this is how I would like to show you how to negotiate also in a global environment. And here's the main question for the next 1 hour. Is a deadlock, is it the end of a negotiation, or would you say it's just the beginning? Deadlock means someone is coming up with high demand, no cooperation. Like single source is telling you, I need to increase my price by 10%, otherwise I will stop delivering you. The question is this the end of a negotiation where you have to give in, or is this the start of a negotiation, the beginning? I would like to show you a video. You possibly know this movie. It's called The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey and Samuel Jackson. And it's a great movie, and it's based on a real case, by the way. And I know the guy who negotiated this deal. So what I would like to ask you, let's imagine you're the police negotiator and you have to pick up the phone, you have to call the hostage taker. The hostage taker is in this apartment, he has a hostage, he has a gun, and he knows there's no way out. So the streets are blocked, the SWAT team is in their position, snipers are taking their positions, and you possibly can imagine what's going on in the mind of this hostage taker. So looking outside the window, he can see there is no way out. The helicopters are circling, the snipers are taking their positions, and the streets are blocked, no way out. The location is secured. This means no one can get in and no one can get out. So let's assume you are a police hostage negotiator and the decision maker is telling you, please call the hostage taker. So you pick up the phone, you get the order to call this guy, the helicopters are circling, snipers are there, SWAT team, so everyone is there, and now it's up to you. You pick up the phone, you call the hostage taker, and the hostage taker is telling you, I need a getaway car, otherwise I will kill the first hostage. So now we start a negotiation. And so how to start a negotiation if your counterpart is starting with high demands like getaway car and no cooperation, talking about negative consequences. And I'm sure I know, or you know what I mean. If someone is coming up with high demands and no cooperation, what we need to keep in mind, if someone starts a negotiation, it's always positive because they need something from you. So from my perspective and based on my personal experience, the deadlock of a negotiation is the beginning of a negotiation. And from now on, you need to be very, let's say, concentrated on what to do. I would like to show you the most important principles of a negotiation in a very brief summary. And then I would like to answer all your questions. So the first thing is, of course, you need a target. And you possibly say, come on, Matthias, it's easy to define the target. Well, it's not, to be honest. I had a very difficult negotiation with Sam about my fee for this webinar today. And Sam asked me, so how much do you charge? And my fee for today is, as an example, of course. So this is what I tell Sam. This is my so-called visible target. I tell Sam, I want 100, let's say US dollar. What it doesn't know is what is my room for negotiation. It could be 99, it could be 98, it could be also, let's say, 60. So very important, there are always two targets. There's always a visible target, which is 100, and this one is invisible, 60. This is my so-called walk-away position. So very important. The visible target is not important. What I need to know is what's the walk-away position of my counterpart. Very important, Sam should not ask me, Matthias, what's your walk-away position? Because he would force me to lie. Then I have to say 100. So very important from a negotiation standpoint in defining your target. Number one, always define your target which is visible, sent by email, for example. More importantly, you need to define your walk-away position prior to the negotiation, because under pressure, you're not allowed to renegotiate your walk-away position. And this is what we see very often in business, also in a lot of procurement departments. You renegotiate your walk-away position based on fear, because you're so afraid about losing this single source supplier, and then you renegotiate, and then you come up with a much lower price or value. So very important, define your target, and more importantly, define your walk-away position prior to the negotiation. Do it in writing. It's set in stone. Never renegotiate your walk-away position during a negotiation. On the other side, never ask your negotiation partner for a final position. Never ask for a walk-away position. Never ask what they need, because you force them to lie. So this is the target. Also very important is your strategy. And what we see very often in business, that a lot of people, they negotiate by, let's say, by emotions, by intuition, by relationships, but not by a clear strategy. So I don't want to come up with a lot of theory here. I just want to give you a very brief overview. There are 5 strategies. Number one is competing. Competing means high demands, no cooperation at all. This is a hostage taker. This is very often single source. Yeah? Competing means I want to win against you. It's nothing wrong about it. It doesn't mean it's unfair or they're using tricks or manipulation. It's just I want to win. That's competing. Cooperation, this is a combination of high demands and a high level of cooperation. So this is the so-called win-win scenario. Yeah, this is what you know. Both parties want to win. Compromise, this is in the middle. Avoiding is playing up on time, doing nothing, and giving in. This is what we do at home with our partner. We want to avoid a conflict. We don't want to talk about it. We give in. So very, very important. If your negotiation partner, let's say single source, if they start with competing, so competing again, high demands, it's a high demand, let's say 10% price increase and no cooperation. What you should not do, obviously you should never give in, you should never avoid this conflict, you should never offer compromise because it would be too early. And also very important, you should not offer a win-win agreement. Because if you offer a win-win agreement too early, they get the feeling there's more they can get. So if the negotiation partner, if they start with a high demand and no cooperation, if they start with competing, then you also have to start with competing, because competing against competing is the best starting point. It's the beginning of a negotiation. So for example, if your negotiation partner is coming up with plus 10%, then you need to ask for minus 10%, and then the negotiation starts. Very important, never offer a win-win scenario at the beginning. Don't come up with the proposal at the beginning, because a proposal is also a combination of two demands. And also very important, the team structure. So I've been trained by the FBI, and as a police negotiator, FBI negotiator, if you negotiate in a crisis team, all crisis teams all over the world are using the same model. So as you can see, there are three different roles. Decision maker, this would be, let's say, a CEO in your company. Then we have a negotiator. This would be, let's say, a procurement guy, and commander, director procurement. So what we see very often in a negotiation, that the team setup is wrong. Very often, the decision maker is involved. Very often, there is no commander in place, and very often, the negotiator has a good relationship to the supplier. Well, based on my previous experience, I'm a former hostage negotiator, and I worked undercover for 6 years. Working undercover, buying drugs, selling drugs. I was completely involved in this drug environment. And what I have realized from a today's perspective, I got native. So I started to think like a drug dealer. I was using their wording, their philosophy, and I got native, meaning I started to understand the other side. And this is what we see very often in business as well, that very often negotiators, they go native because they have a good relationship to the other side. So what's our learning from this chart? If you do have to master a tough negotiation, you should always send in a negotiator who is really conflict oriented, not relationship oriented. Because as you know, you have always two targets. You want, let's say, money, and you want to maintain your relationship. And under pressure, you always go for a relationship, and then you give up the price. So in a very brief summary, very important, if you negotiate in a team, make sure that the negotiator in your team has no interest in establishing a relationship to the other side. They need to be good negotiators. So they need to know how to do it. Number two, commander. This is what you need. You need someone who is observing the negotiation, is handing over, or is monitoring the negotiation, and decision makers are not allowed to take part of the negotiation. So Sam, this is from my perspective a very brief overview about what we try to implement in our in organizations, because most clients, most procurement departments, they come up with a solution too early. They try to avoid this deadlock, and they send in the wrong people to a negotiation. So Sam, it's up to you.
That's fantastic, Matthias. And it's interesting coming from your background as to the starting point in which you start to look at negotiations. And I'm interested here because given your background, which we're going to talk about in a second, how did you end up turning that around to then be, I guess, talking to and coaching business people about negotiations? So let's start from the beginning. What was your transition from law enforcement into what you do now, which has informed your strategies?
Well, I was I was
Do you want to share your screen, Matthias? Do you want to show your video?
sure. Um, so obviously you don't see me.
We can't see you, no.
You can't see me. Can you see me now?
No.
No. Wait.
You just need to
I, th I
turn
think
your camera on.
I'm stopped by the
Okay.
system.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Leave that with me. Anyway, carry on. I'll see if I can sort that out.
So no, I think I'm blocked. Can you
Okay.
unblock me?
Sure. Just leave it with me. Anyway,
Okay. Okay.
Karen, as you're saying.
Okay. So um, what I've
So,
experienced, I was an instructor for the police at this time, and a pharmaceutical company asked me to do a workshop for business. And I was so surprised about the bad negotiation skills in this company because I've expected if you are in business, you need to be a professional negotiator. And then I have learned that in business, most managers are not prepared for difficult negotiations. They're trained to reach a win-win agreement, but they're not trained to handle, let's say, a demanding, competing negotiation partner. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you. We can hear you
Okay.
again. I think you cut out for a second.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I try to stop my video, but I'm blocked. Oh, no. Can you see me?
There you go.
Here we go. Now you can see me and hear me. Okay, Sam.
So you came out of law enforcement and then you ended up working for a pharmaceutical company,
Yeah,
and you realized the lack of negotiation skills that were apparent.
yeah, exactly. And then I started to translate my experience, my knowledge from law enforcement to business, like how to set up your team, how to start a negotiation, how to slow it down, how to increase the pressure. I think and the main topic was always that a negotiation, a conflict, a deadlock is a positive signal. It's not a bad signal, because if you're in a deadlock, then you know the other party, they need you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in a deadlock. Yeah. And what I tried to translate is to use all the tactics from the police departments, which you can also use in a business or private negotiation as well.
So tell me about that. Tell me about this, and we're going to put it in inverted commas, this FBI negotiation model.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and what does it do?
Well, there are always two roles in this negotiation team. You have always so-called speaking negotiator, leading negotiator who is doing the talking. And you have the so-called commander who is responsible for monitoring the negotiation, for reading the game, for, let's say, for making sure you're always following your strategy. And what we see very, very often, that there is just everyone is negotiating, so everyone is upset, everyone is emotionally attached, and then you lose your strategy because you're so upset, you're getting angry or emotionally attached, and then you make mistakes. And this is what you need in a tough negotiation. You need a clear role model, you need clear responsibilities.
And how would you put that strategy together? So you go into negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex negotiation, whatever the
Yeah.
scenario is. Let's go back to the emotions behind the kind of hostage type
Okay.
scenario. So how are you putting the strategy together? What influences those decisions?
So the first question is always, what is our biggest fear in this negotiation, and how to set up a team to avoid this fear. So number one, this leading negotiator, he or she shouldn't be afraid of negotiating this conflict. And this is my most, possibly the most important element of this team structure. If you try to establish or to maintain a relationship, you always avoid a conflict, because it's so, I don't, I want to be loved, I want to be accepted. So if I want to if I want to establish a good relationship with you, I would never come up with a high demand, because you could say, come on, Matthias, this is unrealistic. You're not serious. So I'm afraid of being, let's say, pushed away from you. Yeah. And this is why you need always someone who is conflict oriented or not relationship oriented. The second element is this commander who is responsible for the overall strategy. So following the strategy, not being emotionally involved. And decision makers are not allowed to join the negotiation, because if they join the negotiation, they can't use any tactics. They have to make a decision. So if a decision maker, if they join a negotiation, they always end up in this called take it or leave it decision, because they can't start a negotiation from scratch. They have to give in, or they have to make a decision in the room.
And that's very interesting. It's a very interesting point you just made about that part of the strategy where a decision maker should not be part of that negotiation. Very interesting, and I can see the correlations there. And I want to, obviously, there's good reasons as to why I used the hostage taking scenario, and I now want to switch it to talk about how that relates to business. Because and maybe I'll just ask you the question: are there direct correlations? Would you use the same strategy in a complex business scenario to the one you would use in the scenario I just gave you in the first place? Are there
Definitely.
differences?
Well, let's start with the decision maker. Let's say a CEO. In a police negotiation case, the decision maker is never part of the negotiation team, because if the decision maker would listen to this conversation, they would be also emotionally involved. He would like or dislike this guy, and then he would make a decision out of emotions. So a decision maker is not allowed to be part of the negotiation team. In business, if a CEO is part of the negotiation team, they're also emotionally involved. And if they fly in, so we call CEOs very often Superman, because they fly in dressed up like a Superman to support the negotiation team. Yeah. The problem is, if a CEO is joining a negotiation, there are always two major mistakes. Number one, if they fly in, the negotiation team will lose their face, yeah, because they told let's say the single source partner, we can't give 10%, yeah? And then CEO is coming in and saying, well, that's not a problem at all. So they lose their faces. Number two is, if you're a decision maker, your financial background is completely different to the negotiation team. So let's say an additional 1 million, for example, 1 million for a procurement guy is a lot of money. 1 million for a commander is also a lot of money. 1 million for a decision maker is peanuts. It's nothing. So let's say the possibility that the decision maker is giving in is much higher than the negotiation team will give in. So what you can do, obviously, you could always ask for the decision maker on the other side. You could always ask as a procurement manager, you could ask the key account manager in the next meeting, you expect his or her decision maker to join the meeting, and then you can ask a decision maker, what do you think? Do you believe in partnership? Because if you believe in partnership, then we need 10% price reduction. So on the one side, you need to make sure that your decision maker is not involved. And on the other side, you need to make sure that the other side is showing up with the decision maker, then it's easier for you.
Okay, so an interesting takeaway there. So, in a business scenario where on one side of the fence you've got the host organization and their procurement team, what you're saying is don't bring your decision maker, but make sure the other side does bring their decision maker.
Exactly.
Interesting. And so, this concept of being almost emotionally detached from it all. It makes a lot of sense in business, but there probably are some clashes when you're talking about dealing with strategic partners upon whom you are in a strategic partnership with, not single sourcing. So let's move away from single sourcing for a second.
Okay.
And there's often a talk about win-win or win-win-win scenarios. So talk me through that and how relevant you see they are in the types of situations you're describing. Can there ever
Well,
be a win-win?
yes, it can, if you trust your negotiation partner. That's it. So if you do have a really trustworthy, long-term oriented, reliable relationship, then you can talk about win-win, because then it's not, then you don't use your information in a tactical way. Then you show your cards because I trust you. Yeah. So let's say I negotiate with you, Sam, and I trust you because we know each other since a couple of years. We have done a lot of negotiations. I can trust you, and you trust me. And then at the beginning of a negotiation, I can show my cards. I could tell you, Sam, this is what I need. This is possible to for our negotiation. But at the end, this is what I need. You trust me, and then we figure out what to do. Yeah, this is win-win. If you trust your negotiation partner 100%, start with win-win. If you trust your negotiation partner 99%, don't do it.
And that's a very great distinction, because what I wanted to do at this stage of the discussion is to make some distinctions for everyone who's listening between when you're going to use certain tactics. So we've moved away. You're no longer being held hostage, so that's fine. So,
Okay.
so that's done. So you're not trying to release anyone from a hostage scenario, and so then you start looking at the techniques. You're no longer dealing with a single source. You're dealing with, let's start with a strategic partner of yours for whom your businesses are growing together. Then that's fine. Let's compartmentalize that sort of thing.
Okay.
Now let's go back into the advanced negotiation techniques, because the person in front of you is someone who, it's not about win-win. It's really about getting the best value for your organization. So let's then recap on a few more tools and techniques to achieve that.
So if someone is going against you, right? So what to do? So what most people, what they do, they negotiate, and at the end they come up with threat. They're threatening the other party because okay, so now we tried everything. If you don't do this, I will do that. So they come up with negative consequences. What you shouldn't do, you should never threaten your negotiation partner, because if you come up with a threat, you will get a counter threat. You will receive a counter threat. This is what we do at home. If you're threatening our kids, if you don't do this, if you don't go to bed, if you don't brush your teeth, it never works, as you know. So in a tough negotiation, you should never use a threat. You should use a warning. A warning is completely different. So so to give you one example, let's focus on the hostage taking. It's easier to explain. I could tell the hostage taker, I'm sure you have seen the snipers. If you don't come out right now, I will tell the snipers to kill you, to take you out. That's a threat, obviously. Or I could say, dear hostage taker, we are here in the same situation, and our responsibility is to find a solution. If we together, if we don't find a solution, the decision maker will take over. I have no idea what they will do. So this is a warning. It's completely different, because I didn't come up with a negative consequence. I talked about common interest. So we are here in the same situation. It's our responsibility to reach an agreement. If we don't reach an agreement together, someone else will take over the lead. So this is a warning. It's also pressure. but it's easier to negotiate. So in the business context, you wouldn't say, if you don't agree, we will start an e-auction. You would say, dear supplier, we believe in partnership, we believe in long term. To make sure we will reach an agreement from in a long term perspective. It's very crucial to talk about a very important element. We need to reach an agreement today. If we don't reach an agreement today, our internal buying center will take over the lead, and I guess they will focus on an e-auction. So with the threat, I'm the problem. With the warning, I help you to solve a problem. Yeah, and this is very, very important. Never come up with a threat. Use a warning.
And that's a great correlation in business. So obviously the lead negotiator is your CEO. You know, that's a correlation, and the sniper is the procurement team, right? so, so I suppose that's a good correlation. So procurement teams everywhere, you are known as snipers, and I'm quite comfortable with that. It gives you an awful lot of power, I think, a lot more teeth anyway. So that's very interesting. Actually, it's a great perspective. Are there cultural considerations? So, in other words, let's be fair. There are people from around the globe on this webinar, and there are different scenarios in which people will go into in different parts of the world. Are there different ways to do it in different parts of the world? Are there people who will not respond to the threat of a sniper?
So, as I mentioned it before, we are also operating globally. And what we see that the C-level guys, so CEOs, CFOs, these guys, they think and work globally. Let's say a CEO from a Chinese company, they studied in UK, they worked in South Africa a couple of years. So their partner, their wife, their husband is from Dubai, for example. So so these guys, they think globally. What we have analyzed, that if a CEO from China is meeting a CEO from the Middle East or America, it's easy to negotiate because they have the same understanding. They know the written rules of a negotiation, and they also know the unwritten rules. The second level in an operation, most of them are not operating in a global way. They are more local oriented.
The snipers.
And snipers. And this is why what we see very often is it's pretty easy to reach an agreement on C-level, but it's pretty hard to get it done inside the company, because the second and the third level, they don't understand what the C guys have agreed on. Right. And this is what we see. So from our perspective, the problem, the issue is not a Chinese partner is negotiating with an American partner. The biggest issue is a C-level is negotiating with their internal second or third line of management. Yeah.
And how do you overcome that within your own organization? That's a negotiation in itself, isn't it?
Yep, it is. And so I have a theory. Diversity is key. Yeah. If your own organization is very diverse, then it's easier to create a global negotiation strategy. You know, my main job, as you may know, is I'm a consultant for negotiations. And if a client is asking me for support, and I talk to the board, and there are, let's say, 10 white old men, and they ask me to prepare a global negotiation strategy, I tell them it doesn't work. Because if you don't have diversity within your board, how do you want to create a global negotiation strategy if you don't understand it?
And that's the kind of geographical thing. Is there a gender bias to negotiation?
No, not from my perspective.
No,
Not from my perspective. No.
So, so you don't see that there's no stereotype around strong negotiators, weaker negotiations, confrontationalists, or is it just on an individual basis?
It's on an individual basis, and you know there are a lot of studies, and so if you believe some studies, then they say that female negotiators they don't come up with high demands. So my wife she knows nothing about this about this
It's being
study.
recorded, by the way. I
Yeah,
should
yeah,
warn you.
yeah. She knows nothing about this study because she's very good in coming up with high demands. So I think it's not based on gender. It's based on individuals.
And is there a different approach in if we try and be a little bit more topical? Is there a different approach or method or results since COVID-19 has happened? So people are meeting now virtually.
Yeah.
Is it more difficult, or is there just a different approach to take?
Well, it's different. From my perspective, it's not difficult because it's still a negotiation. You need your target, you need your strategy, you need your tactical steps. Um, it's from my perspective, there are a lot of advantages because it's not so emotionally anymore. Yeah, so it doesn't take so long anymore. So all the negotiations on in a digital way are much focused. Everyone is very concentrated on getting things done. You don't have these loops talking about the same thing ever and ever, again and again, and there are no emotions involved. Because if someone is coming up with a stupid comment, you just you take a note and then you continue. Yeah? So it's easier to negotiate in a digital way. What you need to know, and this is very, very, very important, is you need to separate the formal negotiation from the informal negotiation. So the formal negotiation is via let's say, via Zoom, via Teams. This is visible for everyone. So we are in a room, we talk to each other, it's recorded. So I have to be very careful. It's very difficult to test the water, meaning it's very difficult to test an option. So what I do, I would be here in the formal negotiation with you, Sam. I would say, well, Sam, this is really difficult. And on LinkedIn, I would send you a message by, Sam, what can we do now? Yeah. So what you need to do in the digital negotiation, you need to make sure that the other side can reach you in an informal way, because sometimes you have to test something. In the former world, prior in the world before prior COVID-19, this was the coffee break. During the coffee break, you grab some coffee, and in this face-to-face meeting on the way to the coffee machine, it was like, Sam, so what can we do? And this coffee machine tactic switched to the LinkedIn coffee machine, which means you test the water on LinkedIn, but not in a formal negotiation anymore.
Fantastic. I'm now going to take some questions from the audience here, and I'll start with one from Gabby, who says, how do you get the other party to reveal their walkaway points? Are there any helpful questions?
Nope. The only way is you need to walk away.
Okay.
So if you need to know their walk away position, you need to walk away. Very important. Walking away is not the end of a negotiation. It's just a tactic. So you need to walk away before they walk away. If you walk away, you need to follow a clear strategy. Number one is say, okay, dear negotiation partner, thank you again. We are here in the same situation. We tried so hard to reach an agreement. And then you need to open 3 doors. Then you need to say, so Gabi, from my perspective today, based on what we have discussed, I'm afraid I don't see any solution. Thank you so much. So I opened 3 doors. From my perspective, it's me. Today, it's a time door. Based on what we have discussed, a content door. It's not possible. So, and then I walk away. Very important, walking away is I don't say you can reach me at any time. Or here's my telephone number, my mobile number. Because walking away is to increase the pressure. And then let's say, then I walk away and then I wait for you to come back. If you don't come back, I can step in easily by saying, okay, Gabi, I told you from my perspective, it's not possible. My colleague Leanne, she came up with a great idea. And then I could say, well, yesterday I told you it's not possible. Today I received a new information which I would like to share. So there's always a door which I could use to come back. So walking away, it's not the end, it's a tactic.
Okay. And one here from Headley who's saying, what's your take on starting a negotiation with no?
Well, as a hostage negotiator, you are trained, you're not allowed to say no. If the other party is saying no and is still in the room, then you know something is wrong. So if someone is talking to you, they are in a dependent situation, otherwise they wouldn't talk to you. If they say no, then it's a great signal to start a negotiation, because no, it's possibly no, not today, but possibly tomorrow. No possibly means not this volume, but possibly if you increase the volume by 10%, it would be possible. So a no is, don't focus on the no, and also never repeat a no. So if someone is telling you no, then you shouldn't say, oh, it's a no. Then you say, well, thank you for your clarity. It's very important to express your concerns. What about? And then you continue.
And which brings me on to the other thing, actually, because you said no is not a good idea, especially in a hostage situation. Have you ever, and this is a question that we've received, have you ever failed in a negotiation that resulted in a loss of life?
Not in a loss of life, but I made a lot of mistakes, also as a hostage negotiator. And I know the reason. The reason was always the same. I was emotionally attached. Yeah. And you know, I guess in business I'm a pretty experienced negotiator. At home I negotiate like a beginner. Yeah. If my daughter is asking me, Daddy, can I get the new iPhone? And then, instead of saying thank you, that's a great idea, what about? Yeah. I think by myself, why not?
and that's a very, I mean, the emotional involvement is
Yeah.
very key. I think you've demonstrated that clearly there, where we all think we're professionals in certain things, but
Yeah.
there are areas where we
Not
have
at home.
weaknesses.
Not at home.
Not at home, yeah.
No.
Which brings me on to my next question from Cameron, which is, and it leads on from that. So Cameron is saying, unlike in a negotiation scenario in law enforcement where the negotiator can in effect be a third party, it's relatively easier not to get emotionally involved. In business, often it's not so easily done, because a lot of times you do have some sort of relationship or past relationship with that party. So how can you avoid getting personally involved in negotiation without the risk of losing the opportunity?
Well, I think I need to clarify. If you negotiate with a hostage taker, it seems to be a single source. It seems to be a single game negotiation. Like, I won't tease this guy anymore. Yeah? What you don't know, this guy will end up in jail, and in jail he will meet his community, and they will talk about me in his community. And very important, as I worked undercover, I was allowed to use a different name. Yeah? I had a different agenda. In a hostage negotiation team, I negotiated with my name. So not only this guy knows my name, the entire community, they know my name. They know where I live. Yeah? So it's also a so-called third party involvement. So very important. Um, you're allowed to use these hardball negotiation strategies, like high demands, coming up with a warning. Yeah? That's allowed. You're not allowed to communicate in a disrespectful way. So, so I'm 100% sure you never destroy a relationship by asking for more. You easily destroy a negotiation by communicating in a disrespectful way. Yeah? So so it's all about respect. If you communicate in a very respectful way, you can ask for everything, and then it's the third party is also is not becoming an enemy. Yeah? It's all about respect. And I know most people they believe as a hostage negotiator, this, this is ugly guy and coming up with threats, and that's not true. All the hostage negotiators I know, and I know a lot because I'm part of this community since almost 20 years. All of them, they're extremely friendly, charming, nice guys. because this is the best way to reach an agreement.
And that's applicable to, you know, in business terms, hostage taker, single source. Is that how you would align it? And in which case, how would you align the scenario between your strategic partner?
Well, if you know, everyone is talking about long-term partnership, win-win. The question is always, are they really long-term and relationship-oriented? Well, I'm sure if both parties believe in win-win, if both parties believe in a partnership, in communicating in a very respectful way, everything is fine. But the problem is that sometimes you believe everything is okay, and then you end up in a deadlock. And so what the biggest mistake from my perspective is, if you believe you are right, if you believe that your position is right, then you try to convince your negotiation partner that they are wrong. Meaning, in a negotiation, you come up with an argument. So I try to convince you by coming up with an argument. And then, obviously, I will receive a counter argument. This is why in a negotiation, you're not allowed to use an argument. Instead of an argument, you should use a demand, because then it's easier to negotiate. Yeah. So my daughter, she wouldn't come up with an argument. She'd just tell me what she wants. I want a new iPhone. Yeah? And then I shouldn't come up with a counter argument. I need to come up with my demand. Yeah? And then we can start a negotiation. So coming back to your question, yeah? What we see is that a lot of people, they talk about partnership, but they don't negotiate in a partnership oriented way. They try to convince the other one that they are right. And this is that's definitely wrong.
So don't convince, demand instead. Mm-hmm. In that scenario. Yeah. And what would you say in terms of soft skills, a question we've had in from Cameron, what soft skills do you believe are essential for a negotiator besides communication skills? Are there any other soft skills that a negotiator needs?
I think the most important element is, from a soft skill perspective, is that you are a good listener. Negotiation has nothing to do with talking. Yeah? Most people believe you need to be a good communicator. You need to be able to express yourself. You need to come up with good arguments, value presentation, benefits. But that's not true. Good negotiators are good listeners. They take notes. They are able to read between the lines. If they get a no, they don't write down no. They take notes like, oh, that's great. Yeah? They're always positive and always. So we call it. I grew up in Germany, so I'm a big supporter of FC Bayern Munich in soccer. Yeah? So
I'll make no comment.
No, I think it's you shouldn't. Their mindset is always play to win instead of play not to lose. And so I think this is very important as a negotiator. Your mindset should always be play to win instead of play not to lose. Yeah? And if you play to win, you're always positive, always going forward. Yeah? Then it's easier to do it.
And are there some good ways to practice your negotiation skills?
Yes, it's negotiating. You can't just learn it. Of course, it's great to read books and to watch videos. Of course, it's great to join one of our seminars, for example. But at the end of the day, it's practice. You need to practice every day. This is what I do with my kids, with my wife, with my neighbors, with everyone. If there is a conflict, I start a negotiation. Because it's all about you need to do it every day, otherwise you get old and
your neighbors must really be sick and tired of you using them as guinea pigs all the time.
I don't have neighbors anymore.
There you go. Again, I make no comment. A question we have: How do you execute time-bound negotiations where you have to carry out negotiations in a limited time frame?
Okay. So let's say if your negotiation partner is telling you, I need a decision by Friday, So they set a timeline using time against you. Then you should say, thank you, this is great. This is why to get this done, I need from you by tomorrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By Thursday, I need 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if someone is coming up with a timeline, you need to come up with your timeline before their timeline. So you need to come up with your demands for the next hour, for the next day, yeah? And then you turn it around. What you shouldn't do, you shouldn't say, no, it's not possible. We're always positive, always play to win, always looking forward to discussing next steps.
And what if what if the benefit of the timeline is on your side? So again, coming back to the question that was asked, they're talking about, for example, fluctuation in prices. So in other words, the opportunity is on your side to get it done quickly. How do you speed up negotiations?
Well, you could always say it would be in common interests to make sure we are on the same page. I need an information, so I don't ask for 100 pages. I just ask. It would be great if I can get one information by tomorrow. Making sure we are on the same page. If I don't get this information by tomorrow, I could call my negotiation partner by saying we are running out of time. So we are always on the same track here. We always talk about common interests, and then it's always a little bit like, okay, you are the bad guy, but not me. And this is very important. Never defend your position. Never justify your position. Never justify what you do or don't do. We are always positive, always driving the negotiation, always going forward.
Another question, how do you manage situations where the C-levels insist to be part of the negotiation? And I'll add, without losing your job.
But, so what you need to do, you need to come up with a master plan for the negotiation. You need to tell your C-level guys, okay, CEO, CFO, CEO, here's what we do. So you need to tell them that you have a clear plan. If they get the feeling everything is in control, they will let you do their job. If they get the feeling it doesn't work, they will fly in. So it's all about telling them everything is fine. Dear CEO, if you want to join this meeting, of course you're allowed to join this meeting. What I would like to say is, if you join this meeting, you could get damaged, because that's a negotiation, it's a conflict. And it's so important that you shouldn't be damaged, your relationship shouldn't be damaged. So it would be great if you could reach out to the decision maker on the other side, talking about common interests, about relationship, about win-win, because your role in this process is to do this and not that. So in other words, you need to tell your decision makers what they have to do.
And when you're saying to the decision makers, you know what you're doing, you're in control, is that the case? In other words, do you think, and this goes to a question that we've received as well, do you think the development of a negotiation strategy or negotiation strategies prior to negotiations are useful or are the way to go? Or do you play it by ear? Do you make it up as you go along?
No. You have to make it prior to the negotiation, because otherwise you can't involve your stakeholders. And you need to inform them. So if you work in a big corporation, then 80% of your negotiations are internally. You need to write a newsletter, let's say every week, a weekly update. You need to create let's say a LinkedIn group where everyone can show what's going on there, can see what's going on there. So it's very important that you inform your internal stakeholders, because if they get nervous, they will destroy your relationship, your negotiation strategy. So a negotiation has nothing to do with sitting there, coming up with a good argument and convincing the negotiation partner. That's not a negotiation. A negotiation is a process. And you need to define the process before you sit at the table. So you need to define the target, strategy, team setup, and you need to tell your decision makers, this is what we do. And tell everyone what they have to do, inform them. If they're not informed, they fly in.
And you don't want them to fly in. There you go. No, thanks for that. And final question, I'm going to go to final question as we're running out of time. So just to elaborate, what is the role? Is there a role for emotional intelligence and empathy in negotiations?
Yes, if you're negotiating with a strategic partner, so there's trust, you trust your negotiation partner, then empathy is a very important and a very strong tool. Just keep in mind, empathy could be negative. If you start to understand the other side, then you lose your own target. And it's always in a negotiation, you need to keep in mind it's your negotiation, it's your target, it's your strategy. Play in your sandbox. Don't jump in their sandbox. And empathy very often is used as an excuse because they jump in the other sandbox. So play your game, which is always play to win.
Fantastic, Matthias. Thank you very much. If someone wants to get in contact with you, how do they do so?
So as you can see on the slide, thank you so much for showing it, Sam. Leanne is our director in Dubai. She's based in Dubai. She's doing a fantastic job in coming up with new ideas, new webinars. So just write an email to Leanne. More than happy to answer all your questions. We do have a newsletter every week with new comments about negotiations. We do have a lot of insights, podcasts, videos. So just join our negotiation community. It's great to share ideas and experience with you. Leanne is happy to help.
Leanne, do you want to say a few words? Are you with us?
Hi Sam, hi Matthias. Thanks so much for that insight and for having us on the webinar. If anyone has got any questions at all, I'd be delighted to help you. So just drop me a line. As Matthias said, we do have our newsletter and our social channels. So do follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and our podcast is readily available, the Shriner Negotiation Institute. So do have a listen on that as well. And I look forward to connecting with you all soon.
Great. Well, Matthias, once again, only leaves me to thank you very much. I'm very glad I don't have to negotiate with you, apart from obviously for the fee for this webinar, which was difficult. But I was impressed by my own negotiation skills with that one. So thanks very much for your time. Look forward to interacting even more. And to everyone who attended, thanks for your questions. And we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.